didn't always take me where I wanted to go.
No, but I always took you where you needed to go.
Here's a series of a long-running show that reminds you that sometimes things don't actually have to make sense all of the time for them to be enjoyable, which in this case is really handy.
Because why bother doing anything else?
Matt Smith returns as the 11th Doctor in another series full of wonder, whimsy, and whatever the hell this is. Oh, and characters saying the name of the series over and over.
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who, Series 6.
Hey, nice hat.
I wear a Stetson now. Stetsons are cool.
Doctor Who Series 6 was first broadcast between April and October of 2011, and unlike previous years, would be split into two halves with a 3-month gap in the middle. Now this was great if you wanted to go on a summer holiday and not miss Doctor Who while you were gone, but if you were a 10-year-old fan, the concept of waiting 3 months probably made Rory's stint guarding the Pandorica seem like the blink of an eye.
You had to gloat, didn't you?
I'm not gloating.
I saw that look just now. Ha ha, his ship is rubbish.
True.
Matt Smith's first series as the Doctor had been a huge success, where Karen Gillan as Amy Pond and Arthur Darvill as Rory Williams had made an excellent TARDIS crew. Stephen Moffat, easily the show's best writer under Russell T Davies, had taken over the series and put his stamp on the show from the first seconds of Matt Smith's introductory story. As we said in our Series 5 review, it was a fantastic year of Doctor Who. But that was Series 5, and then Series 6 is another matter entirely.
Well, I'm glad you solved the problem of confusing.
That's sarcasm. He's very good at sarcasm.
To preface, I will be talking about what I thought worked well, and what I didn't think worked so well. As a long-time fan of Doctor Who, I will be watching the series for as long as they make it, or until they carry me out in a blue box. Having said that, would a TARDIS-themed coffin be tacky and just really tasteless? Perhaps, but it's not going to be my problem. At the moment, my problem is how to express my equal amount of admiration and frustration for the episodes of Series 6 without seeming like I'm having some sort of bipolar episode. Or maybe I should just give in and accept that I have to use the red pen and the blue pen in the same sentence. It should go without saying that your enjoyment of this series, like any series or era of Doctor Who, will often come down to where you are in life when you first experience. For me, the constantly changing series lore would just leave me a little cold, while a kid watching this will lap up mentions of the Shadow Proclamation and the science behind the Weeping Angels. So if all of this is your jam, take any positives and negatives listed in this video with a grain of salt. In a nutshell, as we'll show, Series 6 is brilliant, it's bonkers, it's bullshit.
That's right, Adolf. The British are coming.
Technically, we should be starting this video with the 2010 Christmas special, which from a production standpoint was made as part of these episodes, but we'd covered that last season, so we'll skip straight to the Series 6 opener, The Impossible Astronaut.
Space. 1969.
The Impossible Astronaut is Doctor Who going big. I mean, really big. Bigger than the biggest thing ever. Though, it's still the BBC, so not so big that you can't afford to do it on the show's budget.
Cool aliens.
Well, what would you call me?
An alien.
But this is the era where Doctor Who aimed for the stars. Amy, Rory and River Song have received a mysterious blue invitation summoning them to the US in 2011, where all three meet up. The Doctor's also there, where he's 200 years older than they last saw him, so the quartet have a picnic on Lake Silencio in Utah, where things don't go so well as the Doctor is shot and killed by some being in an American astronaut suit. An old man just happens to be there with a can of gasoline, though of course it's television, so introductions are only made after they've all prepared the Doctor's body for cremation. Spookily, they don't know Clanton Everett Delaware III, but he knows them. And then lo and behold, the Doctor shows up, except he's 200 years younger than the one who died.
Just popped out to get my special straw. It adds more fizz.
He'd also received an invitation, though no one yet knows from whom and why. The thought occurs that if you were either a scammer or a serial killer, this quartet would be really quite easy to trap. Meanwhile, President Richard Nixon has been getting phone calls from a young girl asking for help. Ex-FBI agent Clanton Everett Delaware III has been brought back into the fold by Nixon just as the Doctor and company show up, where they offer to assist, provided of course that they aren't shot out of hand by the Secret Service.
Codename the Doctor. These are my top operatives, the legs, the nose, and Mrs. Robinson.
I hate you.
Then there's this thing that everybody can see, but nobody can remember. Like all of those times that England didn't win the World Cup. The silence. Well, They're not just weeping angels with different characteristics that make them hard to defeat. Actually, no, I tell a lie. They are pretty much another puzzle monster. Some creature where evolution was clearly too busy doing the Times crossword puzzle, and as such, kicked up creatures with very random but dramatically very hard to defeat powers. With the Silence, you can't remember them from the second you look away, and hence they've been able to influence and direct humanity for a very long time. But also it's possible that Stephen Moffat had recently gotten his first smartphone with a camera in it, which is why it shows up as a plot device so often this season.
Have you seen my phone?
In Day of the Moon, the clever build-up becomes scene after scene of things happening. Things that make no sense, or they make a little sense, then they make a little bit of sense, and some sense, then they make less sense, and on balance, nonsense. Where if you can remember everything that's happened by the time you get to the end of the season, you'll get a cookie. Or maybe that's exactly what the Silence want us to believe.
The Silence.
People run around and mark themselves if they see the Silence. They search for the occupant of a spacesuit who turns out to be a little girl. And then there's the question over whether Amy is or isn't pregnant, and some mysterious woman with an eye patch. There's so much misdirection and things left half explained that you could think you were watching a show where one of the cast had passed away mid-production and the producers scrambled to cobble together something with whatever footage they had in order to make their air date. A large part of these first 2 episodes is to set up story arcs that will unfold over the course of Series 6. One of which is the Doctor's apparent death, and another is to do with the relationship between Amy, Rory, and River.
You're someone from my future getting that, but who?
Even once you've seen the whole season, it can still seem like a collection of random ideas that has been connected together very loosely in a way that's only very partially successful. Like the time my cousin Ted lopped off his thumb and sewed it on, but backwards, so that whenever he tries to give the thumbs up, he instead pokes himself in the eye. God, Ted's such a dork. However, these episodes are an awful lot of fun most of the time, where these episodes are just red cordial fueled hyperactive in a good way.
You should get us all fight.
The Silence are mostly defeated at the end of part 2, and contrary to expectations would not necessarily fuel a boom in fans dressing like they're going to a funeral.
Is that a mask? Is that a Star Trek thing?
The Silence are a visual triumph, and at this point they're scary as hell. They wouldn't have the same staying power or cultural impact of, say, the Weeping Angels. Unless, of course, they did, and we just don't remember it thanks to their gin plus gin powers of amnesia.
You think you can just shoot me?
They're Americans!
Don't shoot, definitely no shoot.
Shoot us either.
Clanton as a sidekick is great, and Doctor Who humanises Nixon to an extent, turning him into a comedy straight man. This was also the first time that Doctor Who's main unit and cast got to film in America, with some exteriors filmed in Utah, adding some amazing production value, with no hint of quarries, chalk pits, or rubbish tips. The interiors were, as usual, shot back at the show's home base in Wales.
Space, 1969.
Space 1969 is a cheeky reference to the mid-70s series Space 1999, but it quickly becomes a tired reference when it's said over and over.
And it travels through time and space?
Yeah, basically.
How long have Scotland Yard had this?
The young Clanton is played by genre mainstay Mark Sheppard, while the older Clanton is played by his father, W. Morgan Sheppard. Between them, they have appeared in more science fiction programs and movies than an ant colony has openings for podiatrists.
Ever met Freud? No, can't be so far.
Curse of the Black Spot started off as a fun story about some pirates in fear for their lives, and then it becomes something else. A simple cut, nick, or abrasion could summon a beautiful siren to come and kill them.
Okay, just like a shark in a dress and singing and green. A green singing shark in an evening gown.
Lily Cole was the siren who turns out to be a medical wraith in the starship, and yeah, this is going so well for a bit. Hugh Bonneville had been floating around for years as one of those actors who was in this and that and this and that, and had finally hit the big time as the star of ITV's then new hit soap, Downton Abbey. So him appearing in Doctor Who was a pretty big deal. He's Pirate Captain Avery, whose son has stowed away on board, not aware that his father, who used to go "Yar" a lot, was actually a pirate.
I suppose laughing like that is in the job description. Can you do the laugh? Check. Grab yourself a parrot. Welcome aboard.
At one point, Amy pretends to be a pirate, but then that's quickly thrown away, and eventually the crew will find themselves in an alien hospital. In a season where someone's always on the brink of death but then comes back to life, this week it's Rory's turn to be on the brink of death and then comes back to life.
2 planes, 2 worlds. 2 cars parked in the same space.
Curse of the Black Spot was good for a bit and then not so good for a bit, like taking somebody who's fit enough to walk a few miles for a leisurely hike and then asking them to run a marathon in 30 minutes. The results are exactly the same, a wobbly mess.
I go.
The
tard.
Time and relative dimension in space.
The Doctor's wife has a premise that might sound awful on paper, or terrible, or it's a stroke of genius, or you're having a stroke.
He's a Time Lord.
It's just what they're called. It doesn't mean he actually knows what he's doing.
On a junkyard planet, the Doctor thinks he might meet some other Time Lord survivors. The TARDIS matrix gets sucked out of the time machine and put in the body of a woman so that House, a planetary creature, can eat the TARDIS. We've all been there, 2 AM, and so peckish you'd eat anything. The Doctor's wife anthropomorphizes the Doctor's relationship with the TARDIS. Imagine if in Knight Rider, Kit was put into the body of a woman. Well, actually, they did the opposite. In Knight Rider 2010, they took a dead woman and made her into the car's computer that the driver could have VR sex with if he didn't take too long. Michael Sheen played the voice of House. Though he's disguised so much, you might as well have just cast Jimmy Carr and had much the same result. Or maybe not.
700 years, finally, he asks.
So what I call you?
Sexy.
Saran Jones as the TARDIS personified was an excellent choice, where she's a human TARDIS who will of course die by the end of the episode. The scenes of the Doctor and Sexy in the Parts Bin TARDIS are also fantastic.
Right, perfect. Look at that. What could possibly go wrong?
Less fantastic, Amy and Rory trapped in a TARDIS house of horrors. Since 2005, Doctor Who has found it really hard to show anything beyond the console room, but here at least we get to see some more of the TARDIS, and it's just a corridor. The parts with Smith and Jones are great, the TARDIS interior with Amy and Rory, less so. It's a mostly good episode, written by... oh dear.
Oh, well, I'll just go to foot at the stairs.
Bye, gum.
The Rebel Flesh and Almost People is a two-parter with the TARDIS lands on a remote island installation where a crew pump acid to the mainland, but to avoid accidents, the crew control puppets of themselves built from programmable matter known as gangers. The thing is, the human crew treat their flesh avatars like used tissues, and one of the gangers is not happy about it. A full-scale mutiny is at hand with the humans and gangers on opposite sides, while the Doctor has acquired his own Doctor Ganger and is trying to get the humans and gangers to play nice, especially since a major storm threatens to wipe them all out. Well, I'll never be cruel to a pair of kitchen gloves again. This is a two-part story that really does not need to be 2 episodes, apart from the fantastic cliffhanger of the Doctor having his own ganger. Part 2 has the Doctor and Copy swapping shoes to fool everyone, and the byplay between the Doctor and his own mannequin is by far the best parts of these episodes. Then the ending of the episode shows that we've sat through these 2 shows simply as a way to set up the fact that the Amy that's been there for the last few episodes is herself a ganger, and that real Amy is elsewhere. Gangers do sound awfully useful. My Auntie Beryl used to have a ganger that she used to smuggle duty-free sparkling wine across the frontier. That plan fell apart once the ganger decided to set up on her own and successfully framed Auntie Beryl for smuggling duty-free sparkling wine across the frontier. To this day, I'm not entirely sure which one attends Christmas dinner, but they always bring with them a lovely bottle of Prosecco. This two-parter was from writer Matthew Graham, who'd recently come off his 2 acclaimed sort of time travel but not time travel shows, Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes. But for whatever reason, these 2 episodes don't come close to the highs of the adventures of Gene Hunt or Alex Drake.
This is the day he finds out who I am.
A Good Man Goes to War ends up being a mid-season cliffhanger, and once again, it's a beautiful mess that's full of brilliant ideas, like what happens when you give a toddler a highlighting pen and an encyclopedia. On the asteroid Demons Run, an army is being assembled to defend against the Doctor. There are the cleric soldiers of the papal mainframe, including a young woman who was once saved by the Doctor. And then there's all the weird stuff that is just there purely because it makes a striking but of course completely nonsensical visual. Here, headless monks, who are of course notable in that they have no head for heights, no use for sunglasses, hats or mustaches. The reason for being headless monks is explained, but not very well. But I suppose the rather specific laundry instructions about how much starch to use in the hood now makes a bit more sense. Basically, the monks are another excuse for comedy decapitations. All of this is to stop the Doctor from recovering the real Amy Pond and her baby Melody, who is being raised to be a weapon against the Doctor. There's all of the build-up, but then there's the recruiting for the other side. The first recruit is the disgraced Sontaran Strax, now serving penance as a nurse, and there's also the sword-wielding Victorian Silurian Madame Vastra and her girlfriend Jenny. An attempt to get River Song to help, however, is complicated.
He'll rise higher than ever before and then fall so much further.
Oh, and Matt Smith doesn't actually appear in much of the episode. For the first half, everyone's talking about him, and he is represented by a shadow cast by somebody who's clearly not Matt Smith, who is also someone who's not likely to win any cosplay contests at a convention, unless it's for best shadow that doesn't particularly approximate one cast by Matt Smith. The Doctor scenes are all clustered into a few locations, since it was likely that Stephen Moffat wrote the episode with a limited amount of Matt Smith's availability. That's the same old BBC, trying to cut corners by paying the cast hourly.
How did you find him? Stringy.
A Good Man Goes to War at least tries to fill in the Smith gaps with reminders of who these friends of the Doctor are that apparently we've met in a previous appearance, though we hadn't actually met them before. This is their introduction. Neve McIntosh and Dan Starkey had appeared previously in the series as different Silurians and Sontarans respectively. Madame Vastra is a Silurian from Victorian London, while Shrax gets pretty much the best lines in the story as a Sontaran soldier forced into caring for sick humans.
I hope someday to meet you in the glory of battle, but I shall crush the life from your worthless human form.
Also in the guest cast was young actress Christina Chong, who would later star as La'an in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. A Good Man Goes to War is Stephen Moffat throwing absolutely everything at the screen in the hope that some of the good stuff sticks and not so much of the bad stuff drips. The soldiers gathered to fight the Doctor seem to admire him more than they want to kill him. The story of Amy's kidnapping is resolved with her rescue from the clutches of Madame Kavarian, played by Frances Barber, who still has the real melody. There's a big battle, of course, because a lot of people are willing to die for the Doctor.
Demons run, but count the cost. The battle's won, but the child is lost.
And then because the plot kinda fizzles out towards the end, River Song shows up for some more enigmatic and dramatic exposition. She'll hint at something with the Doctor that we're not party to, but we can take a guess. And after he leaves, River will take a very, very long time just to tell Rory and Amy that she is, of course, Melody Pond. Now that's very handy, since there have been so many rotting red herrings that Demon's Run was starting to pong, though that also may have been the hundreds of corpses strewn around the place. A Good Man Goes to War is a big, epic, and mostly enjoyable adventure, full of moments where you want to bang your head against the wall, and then others where you'll stand up from your armchair and salute during the end credits. And then your season of Doctor Who will continue with limited interruptions.
I speak baby.
All through watching Series 6, I've had this nagging feeling that I'm watching something that is just so brilliant, but superficially brilliant, that's left me a little empty inside. So this feels like as good a place as any to talk about the writing process.
All right. There's more.
Every writer is, of course, different. To some viewers, it often feels like somebody sat in front of a keyboard and just kept tapping until they had a completed script. There are television writers like that. Glenn A. Larson, creator of Battlestar Galactica and Knight Rider, was famous for just starting with a blank page and writing until he had a finished script. One methodology that became a common way to work out a script ahead of time was to work out the story, or break it, where a writer or writers would work out the basic idea and break down the story beats and plot into individual scenes. They would write these on a card and stick it on a board. If you stepped back, you could see the entire plot and how it flowed. And once everything tied together and hit the beats you wanted, that is when the writer would go off and write the actual script. Now, it's possible that Doctor Who writers used a similar method, but some of these Stephen Moffat scripts can sometimes feel a bit like this.
Seriously?
What's on the cards is great, just not necessarily the way they're all tied together.
Why would a Time Lord be a weapon?
They've seen you.
3 months later, we would have the same season, but with another season opener vibe. One that tries to match the breakneck pace and fun feel of The Impossible Astronaut. Let's Kill Hitler is not on the same level of brilliance.
I'm getting this sort of banging in my head.
Yeah, I think that's Hitler in the cupboard.
Let's Kill Hitler starts off with Amy's best friend from childhood, Mel's, who's a tearaway that would have been expelled from Grange Hill for stealing Bronson's hairpiece and wearing it as a merkin. Mel's was there when Amy realised that Rory was hanging around because he had a thing for her, which is just as well because it would have been really awkward if he'd been hanging around with the pair because he had a thing for Mel's. Mel's, being such a spitfire cracker doused in kerosene, has stolen a car and of course has a gun, so why not?
Let's kill Hitler.
Oh, if only we didn't have those pesky laws of time. Back in Berlin in 1938, there's another wrinkle, the Tesselector, which is a shape-changing robot crewed by shrunken people from the future whose job it is to take history's biggest and most evil arseholes and make them suffer. They should give me a call, I have some suggestions. Including that snitch at work who narked on me for taking a second hobnob from the kitchenette at work. The Tesselector is a perfect way to blend in, but it's plagued by design issues, such as killer antibodies that are a bigger threat to the crew than a driverless taxi. Mel's is seriously injured before she has a chance to kill Hitler, so I'm already disappointed that Hitler's death is somehow avoided. But if you hadn't worked it out by now, Mel's or Melody knows that Amy and Rory are her parents, but she doesn't yet go by River's Song. She was trained by Madame Kavarian, where she has her mission to kill the Doctor, while, apparently, Alex Kingston's mission was to go as large as possible in her performance.
I'm gonna wear lots of jumpers.
While River's here to kill the Doctor with poison, the Tesselector is actually here for River's killing of the Doctor. The Doctor's gonna die, and so he changes into a top hat and tails, and I'd never made the connection before, but I really did love Matt Smith and Young Frankenstein. River saves the Doctor by using up her remaining regenerations, and then Amy and Rory won't see their daughter for a while. Consequences schmonsequences.
Dangerous thing, foreknowledge.
And of course, next week's just going to be a whole other adventure. I mean, there's still that pesky matter of the Doctor's impending death.
I was on my way to this gay gypsy bar mitzvah for the disabled when I suddenly thought, gosh, the Third Reich's a bit rubbish. I think I'll kill the Führer.
Is River Song a Time Lord, or does she just have the power of regeneration? River, or Melody, was apparently conceived by Amy and Rory after they spent their wedding night in the TARDIS while it was in the Time Vortex.
Human plus Time Lord.
Which, even without a blacklight scan of the TARDIS, raises even more sticky questions than it answers. She's become a semi-Time Lord through some sort of osmosis that's treated almost like somebody just picking up a local accent on an airport stopover. But I understand that from personal experience. I once watched an entire episode of Taggart, where I picked up a totally perfect Scottish accent from Mark McManus. That can they possibly be told apart from the real thing? Oh, hi, the new you murdering murderer.
You let them all die first, okay?
You're so Scottish.
Night Terrors was originally meant to appear in the first half of the season and was one of the earliest episodes to go before the cameras. A young boy is frightened of, well, everything, and the Doctor hears his pleas in the TARDIS. The crew investigate, only for the Doctor to team up with young George's father in dealing with whatever was scaring the young boy. Amy and Rory are the first to find themselves in a spooky house where not everything is what it seems. There are also some creepy doll-like things because, well, they're in a dollhouse.
Anything that frightens him, we put it in the cupboard.
I'm much the same, except my cupboard is full of people who knocked on my front door spreading the good word, which unfortunately for them, that word is trespass.
Cupboard bad, cupboard not bear. Stay away from cupboard.
Night Terrors is not a favourite of mine, though Matt Smith and Daniel Mays as the frazzled dad do make a great duo. Young George turns out to be an alien who's been adopted by an Earth couple, and then it's about the dad accepting his son, and that's it.
Come on, Alex, come on. Are you crazy? We can't open the cupboard. God, no, we mustn't. Right.
The nice direction just about saves the episode.
Oh, cut to the song. It's getting boring.
We would, but there is no Dalek story this series.
Got a bit harder to stay charitable once I entered Decade 4.
The Girl Who Waited is another episode structured in a way so that a very convoluted setup of a particularly specific set of circumstances ends up with people having to make choices between two very bad outcomes. For reasons that just about work in the episode but on paper sound about as likely as me winning a Grammy for Best Spoken Word Gospel EDM album, Amy is trapped in a facility where time runs at different rates depending on what room you're in. Amy's alive, but she's 36 years older. So then the question is, what happens to the older Amy? Are there going to be two Amys, classic Amy and vintage Amy? Older Amy is exactly like younger Amy, but with jowls and a slightly deeper voice. Rory wants to save both older Amy and younger Amy.
Can that work?
I don't know. It's your marriage.
While the Doctor knows there's only one choice, sacrificing the Amy with a higher odometer reading. The makeup, though, for the older Amy is pretty good for television. It's one of those premises that feels incredibly forced, where a lot of things have to sound believable for it to work, but in this case it does mostly work, and this is one of Karen Gillan's few opportunities to play Amy as somebody with some actual emotional heft, rather than somebody full of sarcastic glibness. Whatever.
I've been on my own here a long, long time.
She's annoyed at again having to wait for the Doctor to come back for her. This is despite the fact that her total wait time is probably, 50 years, compared to Rory, who hung around for 2,000 years. The Doctor's role is again structured in a way to reduce the amount of Matt Smith, but ends up as a great episode for Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill, who's clearly playing Rory as someone with a thing for cougars.
How about Amy 1 speaks first?
Which one's Amy 1?
Well,
I am.
The God Complex is a show about fear and faith, even if sometimes they seem to be one and the same thing. The TARDIS lands inside what looks like some sort of anonymous and charmless hotel. I mean, it's not 5-star, but it's certainly competitive.
you tried the front door?
No. In 2 days, it never occurred to us to try the front door. Thank God you're here.
Inside there are a bunch of characters waiting to find a room with their biggest fears. And of course, it's not a hotel, it's just something that looks exactly like some dingy hotel, and there's an alien creature who's been imprisoned there and feeding on the faith of the victims. Pretty sure they don't list that on booking.com.
Every time someone was confronted with their most primal fear, they fell back on their most fundamental faith.
It's a creepy story that's well directed. David Williams from Little Britain was a long-time fan of Doctor Who, and here gets to play a character from the planet of the doormats.
We're lining all the highways with trees so invading forces can march in the shade.
Amy and Rory are reaching a point where a change is needed, but the Doctor gets in first, giving them keys to a house and a car and telling them to live their lives. I just hope the actual owners of the house and the car don't press charges. It is another fake out, as the pair will be back as companions in due course. But here is where the show is set up so that we don't have to have the companions in absolutely every story. For much of the rest of the Moffat era, the companions will have one foot in their own home, while the other is in the TARDIS, which would make dancing along to Kylie's greatest hits a little dangerous. The season has seen a slow transition for many episodes, where it feels less and less like Doctor Who as you knew it, and more like an updated version of Sapphire and Steel, particularly those episodes that are not written by Stephen Moffat. With it, there's more creepiness and spooky horror. Instead of characters running up and down corridors being chased by hungry green monsters on a cheat day, they're instead creeping very carefully down dimly lit corridors, being chased by a newly purchased electronic drum kit who feeds on buyer's remorse. When we say Sapphire and Steel, we're referring to a late 70s classic series starring Joanna Lumley and David McCallum about two beings who investigate time anomalies in a series where concepts often became tangible. Here, faith is an energy source that a creature can live off. In other episodes, alien incursions are defeated by love. Sapphire and Steel was a very good series that was played very seriously, where it felt a little bit like Doctor Who in the late 70s in some ways, but was also very different from Doctor Who. This era of Doctor Who seems to be taking a lot more influence from shows like Sapphire and Steel and other more whimsical fantasy series from the 70s than actual Doctor Who. There has always been a little bit of this over the last few series, but all of a sudden, the show just seems much more of a fantasy than ever before. My dumb theory, Sherlock happened. Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss' idea to update Sherlock Holmes predates Stephen Moffat being offered Doctor Who. They had made a Sherlock pilot in 2009, but some fairly major changes were requested before reshooting the first script along with 2 more episodes in between production of Series 5 and 6 of Doctor Who. Sherlock was broadcast before Series 6 of Doctor Who, and it was a massive success. So almost overnight, Sherlock was the serious and cool detective series, and Doctor Who became a much more fantasy-based series aimed at a younger audience, full of big histrionic moments and spectacle. Almost from the beginning of Doctor Who, the Doctor had often had similar powers of deduction to Holmes, where both were swotty know-alls who knew everything about everything. Both, however, were even less fun when the subject of conversation was about something ordinary like the weather or traffic or the game last night. Even less fun than talking about darts with the legendary snooker historian Len. So almost overnight, Sherlock was the serious and cool detective series, and Doctor Who became a much more fantasy-based series aimed at a younger audience, full of big histrionic moments and spectacle. Was there a deliberate change in Stephen Moffat's mindset, so that he wasn't in effect working on 2 series that were almost the same? At the time, I often found myself wishing that his version of Doctor Who was more like his version of Sherlock, though of course Sherlock would lose its focus over time and end on a down note. Of course, any perceived change in tone in Doctor Who could all just be an enormous coincidence, like the time I was playing Five Finger Fillet one night and quite coincidentally was hospitalised later that same evening.
Prefers to be called Stormageddon, Dark Lord of all.
Sorry, what?
That's what he calls himself.
In closing time, the Doctor's on a farewell tour and stops in to visit Craig from last season. So the Doctor's visited all of his really close friends and then all of his acquaintances, then the random work colleagues whose name he doesn't quite know but still feels obliged to nod at when passing them on the way to the bathroom, and then after all of them, he stops off at the people he met once for an episode, and near the bottom of that list, I would wager, is Craig, who's looking after his infant son Alfie, while his girlfriend Sophie is having a vacation from Craig. A break from the responsibilities of looking after a big baby. And Alfie.
They gave me a badge with my name on in case I forget who I am. Very thoughtful, as that does happen.
And then the Doctor's working in a department store that has a teleport to a Cyberman ship. Most of this episode is very slight, played for laughs, and it's mostly quite funny. The Cybermen, of course, one of the Doctor's greatest enemies, were not impressed. Linda Barron from Open All Hours had been the main villain from the 1983 story Enlightenment, and had sung the song punctuating the 60s story The Gunfighters. And of course, James Corden is back. Isn't that a phrase you just love to hear?
Tonight on BBC One, some more goddamn James Corden.
I'm back!
A few years after this episode, James Corden was tapped as the host of the American network super late night series The Late Late Show, where insomniacs trying desperately to doze off to sleep would suddenly find themselves super alert and ready to punch the wall. The day James Corden left the UK for such a plum gig in the US has been recorded by historians such as Simon Sharma's brother's neighbour as one of the happiest in the UK, where the entire nation toasted both their good fortune and James Corden's departure. But eventually, somehow, Corden returned, Counterpoint, I mostly enjoyed Gavin and Stacey. The Cybermen, of course, were still not impressed.
Cybermen.
The Cybermen are back, but not for long. They also almost turned Craig into a Cyberman, but even the Cyberman without any emotion cannot deal with James Corden. Last time James Corden defeated an alien menace, it was through the power of love. And again, that's what happened here. It's such an on-the-nose concept that it's even pointed out in the dialogue by the Doctor.
That's impossible, and also grossly sentimental and oversimplistic.
Closing time also saw the return of the Cybermats.
It's a cybermat.
What's a cybermat?
It's one of those.
Though, of course, they now have scary teeth and are more comedy scary in this mostly comedic episode. Once again, the Cybermen were not impressed.
I'm too sexy for my shirt. Too sexy for my shirt. So sexy it hurts. And I'm too sexy for your party. Too sexy for your party. The way I'm disco dancing.
It's not all comedy and James Corden, which, having seen parts of his talk show, are two things that don't always go together. But it does have to lead into the finale and attempt to tie up a few dangling story threads.
Hell in high heels.
Tell me more.
You can probably guess what happens at one point in an episode called The Wedding of River Song. And if you have seen it, I'd appreciate it if you explain what actually happens in detail. Please write as many paragraphs as you need and include diagrams. Time has gone wrong with the Holy Roman Emperor Winston Churchill, flying creatures, and all manner of weirdness as the date has become stuck on the day that the Doctor was meant to die. The Doctor tries to tell the alternate reality Churchill why all of this has happened. Rather than kill the Doctor at Lake Silencio in Utah, River Song in the spacesuit instead spares the Doctor. But because of all of the wibbly, the wobbly, the timey, and indeed the wimey, things have gotten completely stuffed up. In the alternate reality, the Doctor meets up with the leader of the Resistance against the Silence, Amy Pond, who sort of remembers how things were, but of course she doesn't remember Rory.
I love him very much, don't I?
Apparently.
The Silence are the leaders of a religious sect whose reason for being is to stop the answering of a question. The question being,
Doctor Who?
Oh god damn it. Who wrote this? Ah, that figures. Silence Will Fall was teased last series and became a central part of this year's story arc. This episode also kicks off the 7th series story arc about Trenzalore, which would see out the Matt Smith era. But first we have to deal with what the episode's title was about. River Song killing the Doctor is the key to getting time moving again. So why not just get hitched first? Well, of course there are. The parallel universe is wiped out, apparently by a kiss, and then back at Lake Silencio, things are back on track. But it's actually the Tesselector with the Doctor inside that is being shot, which is apparently enough to fix time. Time is apparently a bit of a thicko. After all of the build-up and the decoys and the tangents, the whole season storyline is solved with a clever fake-out, which is pretty much like how I ended up with a Bobcat operator's license. Now, I can do landscaping really cheaply, but only if you sign an ironclad waiver. The important thing is that there are no consequences and that the Doctor is alive. With the Doctor having faked his own death, almost everybody has forgotten about him, at least until that gets ignored within about 2 episodes. Rinse and repeat.
Are you sure, River? You're really properly sure?
Of course I'm sure. I'm his wife.
Yes, and I'm his
mother-in-law.
Brilliant bit follows brilliant bit. Exciting bit, scary bit, amazing bit, drill bit, funny bit, poignant bit, shooting guns into the air at a wedding bit, setting off firecrackers in an oil refinery bit, discovering Scottish tablet for the first time bit, and then when you add it all up, it's a mess. That is Series 6 as a whole. Lots of brilliant, absolutely brilliant moments in isolation, but also lots and lots of sticky tape trying valiantly to keep it all together.
I'm sexy.
Oh, he's still shut up.
The Wedding of River Song does at least resolve most of this series' major plot points. It does set up a few for the next series, and then also managed to, well, if not stick the landing, at least make an emergency landing in the jungle with most of the passengers surviving.
Hi, honey, I'm home.
And what sort of time do you call this?
At the time of making this video, Alex Kingston would make one further appearance on the television series as River Song. The Wedding of River Song also confirmed the death of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart after Nicholas Courtney's death, which was touching. Which was then, of course, completely undone in Series 8.
What exactly did she say?
She said that you were a Mr. Hottie, nurse.
On balance, Series 6 is very enjoyable. It's full of brilliant moments, but there's just something lacking. It's very fast-paced, where it only occasionally stops for a breath. The moment-to-moment action is often great, but then you take that step backwards and you start to see how poorly some of the brilliant images tie into the rest of the episode. The dialogue almost always sparkles, and the cast's chemistry make the banter shine. That's the thing, the very best parts of Series 6 aren't alternate history London, or robots, or trying to kill Hitler, or turning Nixon into comic relief, or little girls in astronaut suits, or the silence. It's almost any scene where the Doctor, Amy and Rory just talk to each other. It's a couple of smart asses riffing around the galaxy, rather like the ill-fated Mission to Mars episode of Taskmaster. The practical and computer-generated special effects in Series 6 are mostly great, and have pretty much held up very well compared to earlier seasons. The audio-visual presentation of Doctor Who by now is absolutely phenomenal. Here's a show known for making do, and still occasionally looking relatively cheap even as late as last series. By Series 6, the people making Doctor Who not only have the experience to do their best work, but also the confidence, the time and the budget to execute. The cinematography, lighting, sets, costumes and, well, just everything is amazing. The money is there all on the screen. There would have to be a scaling back for future series, but not just yet. Murray Gold's soundtracks are approaching their peak of epicness.
So you're going to do this? Let them all think you're dead?
It's the only way, then they can all forget me. I got too big, Dorian, too noisy.
All through the rebooted series, production values would improve year on year. But when you go back and pull out your pedant brand magnifying glass, price $9.99, you can see where corners were cut or something was slightly too cheap. But by Series 6, there's none of that.
Yeah, that's what you said when we made Rasputin green.
2011 would end with the Christmas special, The Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe.
Suddenly the last 900 years of time travel seem that bit less secure.
This is Stephen Moffat riffing on C.S. Lewis, though with a few science fiction elements laid over the top of a story about a wartime widow putting off telling her kids that their airman dad has been listed as missing, presumed killed. The Doctor repays Madge for helping him a few years earlier, where he treats the kids to an adventure, which of course goes more than a little bit wrong. Where they're in a forest, there's a giant robot, there are beings made out of wood, and a trio of soldiers from Androzani Major, with a major deforestation campaign involving acid rain. And by now I think the series is really going to need to top up its credits at random.com.
If I tell them now, then Christmas will always be what took their father away from them, and no one should have to live like that.
Claire Skinner appears as Madge with comedy stars Bill Bailey, Arabella Weir, and Alexander Armstrong, though the latter is quite well known now as a quiz show host. It's possibly the single most saccharine Doctor Who Christmas special produced so far. There's nothing wrong with aiming for pleasing a general audience comatose in front of the television on Christmas night, but perhaps this episode lays on the syrup just a little bit too thick. It looks beautiful and sparkly, and again, Matt Smith and Claire Skinner make a good team for the episode.
Well, this is all really rather clever, isn't it?
The Doctor will end up spending Christmas with Amy and Rory after a 2-year gap since his apparent death. You might think that it will be a wonderful Christmas dinner with the Ponds, but it cannot be stressed enough. Amy is the Doctor's mother-in-law, which would explain an awful lot. Now, we freely admit that our reviews of the Stephen Moffat era have this toing and froing between utter admiration and then shaking our fists and doing the Colonel Clink voice. Moffat!
I've got to invent a setting for wood, it's embarrassing.
The criticism comes from a place of unwavering love for the series, regardless of who's making it or who's in it.
What now, Doctor? Well, time to get cracking, Doctor.
This era of Doctor Who likes to return to the well again and again. Monsters who have very specific powers and weaknesses, concepts becoming tangibly real, visually exciting non sequiturs that may or may not tie into something else, lots of interminable rhymes or catchphrases with arcane grammar, stories that lead up to an explosion that changes everything and then later being undone like a shoelace tied by somebody who cannot tie shoelaces very well. And if all of that fails, just put in a scene where River is just about to be captured and she instead takes a dive off a building. It sure beats putting things on those fiddly cards. Perhaps though, the takeaway here is if you're ever having a conversation with Stephen Moffat, never ever use the phrase rinse and repeat. Oh, damn it! And while we're on the subject of grinding something into the ground, here's a whip and some dead horses.
Somebody once told me the world is going to roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. Hey now, you're an old star, get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star, get the show on, get paid. All that glitters is gold. shooting stars break the mold.
The Matt Smith era saw a big push into America, with US viewers getting a bespoke intro from Amy Pond before the opening titles. BBC America kicked in some money as a co-production partner for a few episodes, which of course makes the idea of setting the first 2 episodes in the US sound like a really good idea from a marketing standpoint. I totally get it. I have lots of great marketing ideas, like the one I had for the Tofu Kit Kat or the Cholula Churro Chupa Chup. Series 6 also had a number of separate mini episodes if you just wanted a little bit more. Some of these would function as prequels to some episodes, and others were standalone. Series 7 would follow in 2012, but for reasons we'll get to later, it was spread out over 2 years, in the hope that we wouldn't notice that it was spread out over 2 years. So those kids who thought a 3-month gap in the middle of Series 6 was unbearable will have to learn some hard life lessons, because you can't stop them off. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
I'm a model, you know what I mean, and I do my little turn